The courtroom fell silent as the little girl stood on the witness stand, her small hand resting on the police dog's head. Judge Marlowe leaned forward, confused by her whisper. Then the dog barked once, sharp, deliberate, almost human. The prosecutor froze. The defense attorney went pale. Sarah Hayes's breath caught in her throat. Because everyone in that room knew, the child had just named a killer. What happened next shocked everyone and set off a chain of events no one saw coming. Stay with me. This is a story you need to hear. Before we start the story, comment below and let us know where in the world you're watching from today. And if you find the story impactful, don't forget to subscribe for more. Morning came low and wet over the town, a slow, gray breath that filled the streets with damp and quiet. The courthouse sat at the end of Main Street like a tired old judge, its stone face softened by years of rain. Pigeons kept their distance. A single street lamp hummed and went out. Steam rose from a grate and smelled of yesterday's coffee and hot metal. The air tasted of iron and cold paper. People moving toward the doors pulled collars up and kept their hands in their pockets as if trying to hold themselves together. Sarah stood under the courthouse portico, her coat buttoned against the chill, though it did little for the ache inside her. She kept one small hand wrapped around a paper bag. Inside was a sandwich she had not yet eaten and a thin blanket folded tight for Lily. The bag crinkled with every breath she took. The blanket smelled faintly of lavender and the faint, honest scent of a child who slept with stuffed animals pressed to her cheek. Sarah's other hand held Lily's mitten. Lily was at her side, small as a shadow and stubborn as a seed, but today Lily slept, head against Sarah's knee, face slack, with whatever soft, untroubled rest 3 years could give. The courthouse doors opened and closed like the lids of memory boxes. Inside, voices rose and fell. Sarah could feel the thud of her heart against her ribs. She had learned to breathe on the outside and be hollow on the inside. Her mouth was dry, her tongue pressed against her teeth, as if reminding them of their shapes. She had never been in a courtroom before. She had watched dramas on screens, seen people speak with practiced sorrow. Reality was less tidy. The hall smelled of lemon cleaner and old varnish and the faint musk of fear. An impartial voice would have described her as 31, with hair pinned back in a loose knot that threatened to unravel. Her hands showed the map of hard days, faint calluses where a broom rested, a pale crescent scar from a kitchen incident that had happened when Lily laughed too loud and Sarah flinched. Her sneakers were scuffed and mismatched with the rest of her clothes. A ring sat heavy on her finger, a round weight. She had stopped wearing as proof, but kept as memory. She had worked 2 jobs, learned the names of other people's children, stacked shelves and wiped counters until her knees hurt and her patience bent like thin wire. The impartial voice would also note the steadiness in her shoulders, the way she held Lily like a promise. Habit shaped her spine. The closer, empathetic voice recorded the small details that mattered most to the heart. It noted how Sarah rocked on the soles of her feet as if she could lull time itself to sleep. It noticed the way she traced the seam of the blanket, fingers finding the frayed spot where Lily had once tucked a picture. It held the small, private ritual of Sarah whispering a name into the blanket like a prayer, a name she never spoke in front of strangers. It listened to the nervous rhythm of her breathing when she thought no one watched. It held the secret of why she had come to the courthouse with a sleeping girl in a stroller, why the case that day felt like a hinge that might finally swing or break the door. Inside the building, the glass windows let in the washed light, and the waiting room smelled of varnish and stale perfume. A television in the corner broadcast a loop of local news. People read papers with headlines that meant nothing to them. Children were not supposed to be part of this place, and yet one small pair of shoes peeked from beneath a chair, bright pink, scuffed. Lily's hand, warm and small, twitched in sleep. Sarah's thumb stroked the back of it, an automatic reassurance that the world had not yet tilted beyond repair. The case had begun 3 weeks ago as a quiet, impossible thing. A night of noise, an alarm, the sharp training whistle that cut through sleep, and then men in uniforms who moved like tides, pushing and pulling without explanation. There had been shouting, a wrong door, a frightened child, and a police dog on a leash that seemed to want to be everywhere at once. The dog's name, Hector, was known to the officers and to the dog itself. A name barked like a command and answered with frantic, eager movement. After that night, Sarah had received a letter telling her to appear. Official language, a court date. The words felt like cold hands sliding down her spine. The impartial voice would catalog the paperwork. The counts listed in small type, the line about public safety and disturbance, the bureaucratic neatness that boxed human chaos into clauses. It would cite the list of witnesses and confirm that a trained police canine handler would be present, that protocols required a hearing. It would note the way the system cataloged people and animals with the same clipped efficiency. It would not tell you what Sarah felt. The close voice would tell you what that paper did to her. It turned nights into battlegrounds. It made her put locks on doors she had thought already secure. It puts weight in the air. It took the small, private business of her family and placed it under the cold, clinical microscope of law. The letter did not understand that Lily slept with a nightlight and a dinosaur plushie that had one button eye sewn on by a neighbor. The letter did not know the way Sarah hummed herself steady when the baby cried at 3 in the morning, the way she counted breaths until the world came back into order. Sarah had been careful with her words that morning. She had not told anyone more than they needed to know. She had listened to advice that sounded like pity dressed as counsel. Keep it simple, people said. Let the law do its work. The law could not hold Lily. The law did not know the color of her hair or the way she hummed when she dreamed. Sarah's hands tightened on the blanket. A faint, clinical laugh escaped from the court corridor where officers moved with the slow efficiency of people who had rehearsed the drama. The dog was there, a hulking shape of calm fur and focused eyes, its harness red canine with the kind of authority that had made strangers step back. Hector's breath steamed in the cold air. He sat obediently, head tilted as if he had been trained to listen for trouble in the human voice as well as in scent. Sarah watched him. The impartial observer would say she watched him the way a historian studies a relic, aware of history's weight. The empathetic voice would say she watched him like a mother watches a clock that measures seconds of danger, counting each one with the precision of someone who knows loss. People around them whispered in small, low currents of sound. A man in a suit muttered through a phone call and looked at Sarah as if she were a problem whose edges needed smoothing. An older woman pressed her lips together and glanced toward Lily and then away, as if afraid of what compassion might require. A child in the next seat played with a toy car, pretending the world was still simple and whole. Sarah thought of the night that had led them here, how sound had been the betrayer, how a tinny radio down the hall had been mistaken for anger, how officers had moved with a certainty that did not suit her messy life. She thought of the dog, Hector, and how a being trained to act without malice could still change everything with the force of instinct. She thought of the look on an officer's face when he saw Lily staring through the window, of the way his jaw had tightened with the sudden knowledge that life is never as simple as reports and incident numbers. Her breath made a small cloud in the air. Lily stirred and shifted against the blanket like a small tide. Sarah smoothed the blanket over her and tugged the strollers hood low. There was a softness to her movement that the courthouse did not know how to measure. Beneath her coat, her heart beat slow and fierce, the way someone steels themselves before a leap. She would speak. She had to speak. Not with legalese. Not with clipped statements. With truth. The impartial voice recorded the time. It noted the names of the officers filing in, the placement of the defendant's table, the judge's bench looming like a small mountain. It would later describe the judge's face as unreadable, the way stone can hide 1,000 opinions. It would catalog statements, objections, legal formalities. It would insist on precision. The close voice kept the low, human facts that matter in a story meant to be felt. It kept the image of Sarah pressing a kiss into Lily's hair and whispering a name that stitched her courage to the present. It kept the memory of a child who had once said dog with the careless bravery of a toddler and had been rewarded with a laugh that made the house light. It held, too, a fear that would not be named and an unshakable resolve that whatever came next, whatever the law decided, she would not let fear decide for her daughter. Outside, rain began to stitch itself into the morning. Inside, the courthouse bent to its rituals. Sarah folded herself into the rhythm of waiting, small and deliberate like someone learning a new language. She watched the dog, felt its calm, and felt, beneath that, a question that had nothing to do with charges and everything to do with being listened to and being believed. The courtroom clock ticked like a metronome for dread. Each sound felt louder than it should, marking time between what Sarah once believed and what the morning was turning into. Lily stirred beside her, a tiny noise, half sigh, half question. Sarah brushed a curl off her daughter's forehead and whispered her name. The child blinked once, twice, then opened her eyes to the stale, humming quiet of the courthouse hall. For a moment, her gaze drifted toward the dog. Hector sat motionless by the officer's side, his dark coat absorbing the pale light from the window. His eyes followed movement the way waves follow gravity, never urgent, always inevitable. When Lily met his gaze, something subtle shifted in the air. It was as if the entire hallway exhaled. The officer tugged slightly at Hector's leash, but the dog didn't move. Sarah noticed. Everyone did. A murmur rippled through the people waiting. Small, uncertain sounds of curiosity. Lily didn't flinch or hide. She smiled. It wasn't a shy, uncertain smile. It was knowing, as if she recognized him, as if she had been waiting for this exact moment. "Doggy," she whispered, her voice light and sincere. "You remember." The words hit Sarah like a cold blade. Her stomach clenched. She looked quickly around, but the words had already drawn attention. The officer, tall, broad-shouldered, with a tired jawline and eyes that seemed too much, shifted uncomfortably. He looked down at Hector, who tilted his head in that same curious way dogs do when trying to recall a command. "Ma'am," the officer said, quietly, more to Sarah than to the crowd, "could you keep her?" But before he could finish, Lily had already slipped out from the stroller. Sarah reached for her, panic twisting through her chest, but the little girl moved like light, too fast, too gentle to catch without hurting her. She toddled forward, dragging her soft blanket behind her. The dog's ears pricked. Hector didn't growl, didn't bark. He stood up, tail low, eyes fixed on Lily. The officer's hand tightened on the leash, his voice sharp now. "Hector, heel." But Hector didn't. The dog took one step forward, then another. Controlled, careful. The leash stretched taut. Lily stopped barely 2 feet away and just stared at him. Her eyes were clear and impossibly calm. "You're not bad," she said softly. Every sound in the hallway died. Even the clerks typing halted. The words carried a strange weight, something that didn't belong in a child's mouth. It wasn't the sentence itself, it was the tone. Certain, forgiving, ancient almost. Sarah froze, unable to understand why those 3 words made her heart race with dread. The officer looked at Sarah, frustration flickering beneath confusion. "Ma'am, please." Sarah took a step forward, her voice trembling. "Lily, honey, come back to Mommy." But Lily didn't move. She stood there, still as stone, looking up at Hector. The dog's head lowered, ears twitching as if he were listening to something beyond the reach of ordinary hearing. Then, in a motion that made no sense, Hector sat down. Calm, submissive, eyes soft. The officer yanked the leash, but the dog didn't respond. His training, Years of conditioned obedience cracked in that instant. The handler's face paled. "That's not possible," he muttered under his breath. Sarah knelt, scooped Lily into her arms, and pressed her close, whispering something desperate and quiet. The officer regained control of Hector, guiding him back to his post, but the unease lingered like smoke after a fire. Everyone pretended not to stare. Within minutes, the bailiff appeared at the door. "All rise," he called, his voice breaking the tension but not the strangeness. The courtroom stirred to life. The trial began with the sterile rhythm of bureaucracy, names, dates, charges, but Sarah couldn't focus. Her mind kept circling back to that look between her daughter and the dog. She tried to dismiss it as a child's fascination, but something deeper clawed at her memory. The night of the incident, Lily had been awake. She had screamed, not from fear, but from something else. Recognition, maybe. Sarah hadn't thought about it then. She had been too busy shielding her child from chaos, from men shouting commands, from that one split second when Hector lunged before anyone could stop him. Sarah had always told herself it was a mistake, a misunderstanding. But now, as the prosecutor droned on, she saw Hector's gaze flick toward Lily again, soft and confused. The handler noticed it too. His jaw tightened. "Officer Daniels," the judge said, pulling his attention back to the witness stand, "please describe what occurred on the night in question." Daniels straightened, his posture perfect. "We received a call regarding a suspected domestic disturbance at 14 Glenview Drive. Standard procedure. My unit and I arrived at approximately 10:43 p.m. The K-9 unit was deployed for a security sweep. Upon entry, an altercation occurred. The suspect resisted arrest, and Hector responded to perceived aggression." "Perceived?" the defense attorney echoed. Daniels hesitated. "Yes, sir. There was confusion. Noise. The television was playing loudly, and that confusion resulted in your K-9 attacking an unarmed civilian?" A hush fell. Daniels looked down. It was dark. The subject matched the call description. The dog reacted as trained. No permanent harm was done. Sarah's knuckles turned white around the table edge. No permanent harm. The phrase echoed in her skull, like a lie too rehearsed to break. Then the defense attorney spoke again, his tone deceptively calm. "And this civilian, Miss Sarah Milton, was holding her child at the time?" "Yes," Daniels admitted after a pause. "She was." The judge scribbled a note. Sarah's throat ached. Her eyes darted toward Hector, who still watched Lily with unnerving attention. Something in that stare wasn't obedience, it was memory. The defense continued. "Officer, can you confirm whether your K-9 unit was previously involved in any disciplinary reviews or retraining sessions due to misidentification?" Daniel's eyes flickered, just briefly, but it was enough. The court noticed. The judge leaned forward. "Answer the question." Daniel's voice tightened. "There was one prior incident, Your Honor. Minor." Sarah felt the air drain from a room. She looked again at Hector, this trained, decorated police dog whose name she had read on reports with cold detachment. And for the first time, she saw something human in his silence. Guilt, or something close to it. Then came the whisper from the back of the courtroom. A voice Sarah couldn't place. Low. Male. That's not the only one. Heads turned. The sound cut through the air like a blade. The judge rapped the gavel. Order in the court. But Sarah's pulse was already running wild. Someone knew something hidden, something deliberately buried. She caught a glimpse of a man slipping out the side door, his coat collar raised, his steps quick. Daniel's eyes followed him. Recognition flashed for a moment, then vanished behind duty's mask. And in that instant, Sarah knew this wasn't just a mistake. It was a cover. Whatever happened that night wasn't random. The dog hadn't disobeyed. He had obeyed something else, someone else. As the proceedings resumed, Lily leaned against her mother's shoulder and whispered, almost dreamily, He didn't mean to hurt us, Mommy. Someone told him to. Sarah's blood ran cold. She looked at her daughter at the calm certainty in her tiny voice and realized this was no child's imagination. Lily remembered something no one else had heard. The clock ticked again, louder now, marking the first crack in the story the world thought it already knew. The courtroom's stillness lingered long after the judge called for recess. Papers shuffled, murmurs rose and fell, but the air itself felt dense, like it remembered every unspoken word. Sarah sat motionless at the defense table, her eyes distant, her body a tense, trembling map of what she couldn't yet say aloud. Lily sat beside her, tracing circles on the polished wood with one small finger. She hummed faintly, a tune that sounded familiar to no one but her. The sound should have been innocent. It wasn't. It carried the same strange gravity as her words earlier, the ones that had made even the officers shift uneasily. Across the room, Officer Daniels stood by Hector's side, his hands clasped behind his back, his jaw tight. The dog rested at his feet, unusually still, gaze fixed on the floor. It wasn't the posture of obedience anymore, it was guilt. Sarah broke the silence first. "He's different when she's here," she said quietly. Daniels looked up, startled. "What do you mean?" Her voice was flat. "That dog, he doesn't blink the same way. He watches her, like he's trying to remember something he shouldn't." Daniels hesitated, eyes flicking toward Lily. The child had turned in her chair now, watching them with innocent curiosity. "Ma'am," he said finally, "dogs don't remember things like people do. They respond to cues, tones, smells. Training." Sarah's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Then explain why he listens to her voice more than yours." Daniels had no answer. His mouth opened, then closed. He knelt beside Hector, resting a hand on the dog's collar. "Heel," he said softly. Hector's ears twitched, but he didn't move. When Lily's quiet humming filled the air again, Hector's tail shifted once, a slow, uncertain sweep of motion. Daniel's throat tightened. He stood abruptly. "Maybe she smells like something familiar. My unit's been through dozens of homes, He stopped. His words stumbled under their own weight. Sarah looked at him sharply. "Dozens of what?" He swallowed. "Cases. Operations. We see things. Sometimes the system doesn't always." He stopped again, catching himself. Lily looked up. "You were there that night." The simplicity of the statement burned through him like a confession. Sarah's eyes darted between them. Daniels cleared his throat, the professionalism crumbling just slightly. "Yes, I was." "You shouted," Lily said softly, almost like she was remembering a bedtime story. "You told him no, but someone else said go." Her voice carried through the courtroom's lingering quiet like a bell. Sarah's skin prickled. "Lily's sweetheart, don't." But Lily kept speaking, eyes locked on Daniels. "It wasn't you. It was the man behind you." Daniel's breath caught. His hand fell away from Hector's leash. The color drained from his face. He turned his head slowly toward the side of the room, toward the door where the man in the coat had slipped out earlier. Sarah saw it, the flicker of realization, the guilt, the fear. "You know him, don't you?" Daniels didn't answer. His silence was enough. Later that afternoon, the courtroom emptied for the lunch recess. Rain streaked the windows, turning the world outside into a blur of gray motion. Sarah sat on a bench in the hallway, her hands clasped together, so tightly her knuckles were white. Daniels approached, his steps uncertain. "You shouldn't be here," she said without looking at him. "I had to talk to you," he replied. "I think there's something you should know." Her eyes lifted cold and wary. "About what?" "The man your daughter mentioned," he said, lowering his voice. "His name is Sergeant Cole. He was my superior that night." Sarah frowned. "And—" Daniels hesitated. "And he was the one who ordered Hector to engage. I tried to stop him. He said the suspect was armed. He was wrong." Sarah's voice trembled. So, this wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate. Daniels looked away. Maybe not deliberately. Maybe reckless. But Cole, he's got friends in high places. The report was rewritten before I even saw it. And you went along with it. His shoulders stiffened. I followed orders. Sarah let out a bitter laugh. That's what they all say. He flinched, but didn't argue. I didn't know there was a child. I swear to you. She studied him in silence, eyes searching for sincerity in the hollow spaces of his face. For a long moment, nothing passed between them but the sound of the rain. Then she said quietly, "My daughter remembers everything." Daniel's expression darkened. "That's not possible. She's 3. She remembers his voice," Sarah said, "and yours." He shook his head slowly, as if trying to reason with a version of reality that refused to bend. "Then you understand why I'm here. If Cole knows she remembers anything, he'll make sure she's not heard in court." Sarah's jaw set. "He can't touch her." "You think that," he said quietly, "because you still believe this system protects innocence." He took a step closer, his voice dropping lower. "But people like Cole, they protect themselves first." The words sank deep, settling in the space between anger and fear. Sarah turned away, staring at the rain. "Why are you telling me this now?" Daniels hesitated. "Because the dog wasn't supposed to be there that night. Cole changed the assignment. He said he needed a witness who couldn't talk. A dog doesn't testify." The truth landed like a blow. Sarah's breath hitched. "You're saying he used Hector to do his dirty work." Daniel's silence was confirmation enough. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. The sound of rain had turned relentless, hammering the windows of her small apartment. Lily slept curled against her, clutching the worn blanket. Every time Sarah closed her eyes, she saw the courtroom again, the flash of Hector's eyes, the tremor in Daniel's voice, the shadow of Cole slipping through the side door. Her mind raced. What if they tried to silence Lily? What if this trial was already lost before it began? She got up quietly, careful not to wake her daughter, and walked to the window. Below, the streetlights shimmered through the downpour. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed, a long, lonely sound that seemed to echo her thoughts. She turned as the floor creaked behind her. It was Daniels, standing in the open doorway. His coat was soaked, his eyes hollow. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered again, voice shaking. "I know," he said, "but Cole's moving fast. He's already filed for the K-9 report to be sealed." "What does that mean?" "It means the truth disappears. Hector's body cam, the audio feed, the chain of command logs, all gone." Sarah stared at him. "And you?" "I've already gone too far by telling you this," he said. "If he finds out, then help me expose him." He looked at her like someone seeing the edge of his own ruin. "You don't understand. Cole isn't just one man. He's connected. The kind of connection that makes people vanish quietly." "Then we make noise," Sarah said. "We make it too loud to silence." He hesitated, torn between fear and guilt. Then, softly, he said, "If I help you, there's no going back." Sarah met his gaze, unflinching. "There's no back to go to." Outside, lightning fractured the night sky. Somewhere deep within the courthouse archives, the first pages of a buried report waited to be found, a file that could unravel everything. And in her sleep, Lily stirred, whispering through dreams. "Mommy, the dog, knows who lied." Morning crept in like an unwanted witness, cold, pale, and unblinking. The courthouse looked different in the early light, almost hollow. Sarah arrived early, holding Lily close as if her warmth alone could shield them from what waited inside. Daniels wasn't there yet. She hadn't heard from him since the night before. He had promised to meet her before the next session, to hand over something that could prove the truth about Sergeant Cole. But his phone was dead. His apartment had been empty. The silence around his absence didn't feel accidental. Sarah took a seat on the same wooden bench where she'd waited yesterday. The clock above the door ticked softly, each second a question. Across the hall, Hector lay beside another officer, a younger man this time. He didn't look like Daniels. His stance was rigid, almost too rigid, like someone guarding more than just a dog. When his eyes met hers, there was something sharp behind them. Distrust, maybe, or fear. Lily, sitting on Sarah's lap, looked at the officer and said in her small, matter-of-fact voice, "That's not his friend." Sarah turned. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" Lily pointed to Hector. "He doesn't like that man. He's waiting for the other one." Sarah's throat tightened. She forced a smile she didn't feel. Maybe. But she could see it too now, Hector's tail stiff, his posture uneasy. The dog wasn't resting. He was listening. When court resumed, the prosecutor called their next witness, Officer Daniel Reed. For a moment, Sarah thought she had misheard. But as the man rose, she saw the face clearly. It was Daniel's. Except something was wrong. His eyes, his voice, his presence. He was calm, too calm. His suit was perfect, his badge gleaming. He walked to the stand with the controlled precision of a man rehearsing every step. Sarah's heartbeat stumbled. He didn't look like the man who'd come to her door the night before, drenched and desperate. He looked like someone rebuilt from the inside out. "Officer Reed," the prosecutor began, "please recount your version of the events on April 12th. Daniels, no, Reed looked directly at Sarah as he spoke. His voice was smooth, practiced. "Yes, ma'am. On the evening of April 12th, Sergeant Cole and I responded to a domestic call. Upon arrival, we followed standard entry protocol. K9 Hector was deployed after I identified signs of struggle from within the premises." Sarah's hands clenched beneath the table. This wasn't what he'd told her. Not at all. The prosecutor nodded. "And did Hector act according to his training?" "Yes," he said evenly. He subdued the suspect. The situation was controlled without further escalation. The defense attorney leaned forward, brows furrowing. "You're saying the dog didn't attack an innocent civilian?" Reed didn't blink. "No, sir. The target resisted arrest and endangered the child in her arms. The K9 intervened appropriately." A low murmur filled the courtroom. Sarah's breath came sharp and thin. Her voice broke through before she realized she was speaking. "That's a lie." The judge's gavel struck. "Ms. Milton, control yourself." But she couldn't. Her pulse roared in her ears. She stared at Daniels, this man who had stood in her apartment less than 12 hours ago and told her the truth, who had sworn that Sergeant Cole orchestrated the attack, who had promised her the evidence. Now he was rewriting everything. Reed looked at her with eyes that didn't belong to the man she met. They were cold, empty, not even guilty, just gone. And then she noticed something, a small cut near his collarbone. Fresh, the kind of wound left by something sharp or restrained. Her stomach turned to ice. The defense attorney rose. "Officer Reed, you stated that the suspect resisted arrest. Can you confirm if the suspect was armed?" "No weapon was recovered," Reed said smoothly. "So, the K9 engaged without a confirmed threat?" Reed hesitated, a flicker too brief for most to notice, but Sarah saw it. He glanced toward the prosecution table, where Sergeant Cole sat quietly behind the counsel, not as a witness yet, but as an observer, a looming figure of authority. Cole's eyes met his, and in that instant, Reed's voice steadied again. "The threat was verbal," he said. Sarah's heart dropped. Verbal. He was painting her words as violence. Her fear was resistance. When recess was called, Sarah followed him into the hall. She caught up as he turned a corner, her voice sharp and trembling. "What did they do to you?" He stopped but didn't turn. "You shouldn't talk to me here." "You came to my home," she hissed. "You told me the truth. You said Cole changed the orders. You said the reports were falsified. What happened last night?" His shoulders stiffened. "You must be mistaken." "I'm not." He finally turned to face her, and she wished he hadn't. His eyes looked the same, but something behind them was missing. The spark, the guilt, the conflict. Whatever made him human had been scraped clean. "Daniels," she whispered. "Please." He leaned in close, his voice low enough for only her to hear. "Forget everything you think you know. Go home. Withdraw the complaint." "Or what?" His silence was answer enough. Then he turned and walked away, each step precise, mechanical. Hector glanced up at him as he passed, just for a moment, and whimpered. The sound made the hair rise on Sarah's arms. That evening, Sarah sat alone in her car outside the courthouse. Lily slept in the back seat, her thumb pressed to her cheek, her small breath soft and steady. Rain streaked the windshield again, the sky low and bruised. She replayed everything, Daniel's warning, his sudden transformation, the way Cole had watched the whole thing like a puppeteer admiring his work. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated before answering. "Hello." Static. Then a voice, faint, weak. "Sarah." Her grip tightened. "Daniels." A rasping breath. "They took my badge, locked me in a storage unit under HQ. The call was cut out. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She looked at the phone again. No trace of a number, no record of the call. She turned in her seat and looked at Lily, still asleep. Then at the courthouse behind them. The truth twisted inside her chest like broken glass. The man who testified today wasn't Daniels. He looked like him, sounded like him, even moved like him. But the real Daniels was somewhere else, silenced. Sarah's reflection stared back at her in the rain-dappled glass, pale and trembling. And just behind her reflection, she saw the shape of Sergeant Cole, walking toward the parking lot, his coat pulled tight, his expression unreadable. He stopped beside her window, smiled faintly, and tapped twice on the glass, softly, politely, like a man reminding her that he knew exactly where she was. Then he walked away, and in the quiet that followed, Lily murmured in her sleep, "Mommy, that's the man who told the dog to hurt you." Sarah froze. The betrayal had reached its full shape now. Not just in the system, but in the faces pretending to uphold it. The truth wasn't buried by accident. It had been buried on command. And someone had made sure the one man who tried to uncover it no longer existed. The night after the false testimony, sleep would not come to Sarah. The wind pressed against her apartment windows with the sound of whispers. Every creak in the hallway made her flinch. Her phone lay on the kitchen table, still blank, no missed calls, no messages. She had called Daniels' number over and over until her voice cracked, but it always went straight to voicemail, an automated recording that now felt like a tombstone. Lily slept in the next room, a small silhouette beneath her pink blanket. Sarah moved to the window and looked out at the rain-smeared city. The courthouse tower was barely visible through the fog, a dull, gray shape like a wound that refused to close. Inside her, something was changing. Grief was no longer soft, it was sharp, disciplined. She had spent months fighting to be heard, to prove that Cole had set her up, that she wasn't the violent mother they claimed she was. But after what she saw in court, after that call, she knew she wasn't dealing with corruption anymore. She was dealing with erasure. They hadn't just silenced Daniels. They had replaced him. A low growl broke her thoughts. Hector stood near the door, his ears pricked, muscles tense. "What is it?" she whispered. He didn't move, his eyes fixed on the door, body rigid. Then 3 slow knocks. Sarah's pulse spiked. She crept closer, every instinct screaming, "Don't open it." She peered through the peephole. Nothing. The hallway was empty. Another knock. Softer this time. She reached for her phone, but froze when she saw the text that had just appeared on the screen. "You shouldn't have spoken to him. They know." No sender name. No traceable number. Her breath came short and shallow. Then her phone buzzed again. "You're next." By morning, Sarah was done waiting. Fear had already stolen too many hours. She left Lily with her neighbor, Mrs. Gray, claiming she had to meet her lawyer early. Then she drove downtown, not to the courthouse, but to the police headquarters, the same building where Daniels said he was being held. The front desk officer barely looked up as she approached. "Can I help you?" "Yes," Sarah said. Her voice was steady, almost rehearsed. "I'm here to drop off evidence for Officer Daniel Reed. The man typed something into his terminal. We don't have anyone by that name assigned here today." She leaned forward. "What about Officer Benjamin Daniels?" His expression didn't change, but his fingers stopped moving. "There's no record of any Officer Daniels currently active or suspended. You must have the wrong precinct." "I don't," she said flatly. "He's one of yours." "I'm sorry, ma'am." Sarah stared at him, the truth settling like lead. They had scrubbed him. Not just hidden, deleted. "Can I speak to Sergeant Cole?" The officer looked up sharply. "He's in internal review. Not available to the public." Sarah smiled thinly. "Of course he isn't." She turned and walked away before her anger made her reckless. But she didn't leave the building. Instead, she slipped into the hallway near the back, following the old, half-broken signs toward the evidence wing. She remembered the layout from her time as an assistant clerk years ago, before everything went wrong. She found a stairwell, the air thick with disinfectant and static. The deeper she went, the quieter it got, until she could hear only the hum of fluorescent lights and her own pulse. Then, faintly, a sound, metal scraping against concrete. She followed it. The hallway ended at a heavy storage door marked Authorized Personnel Only. She pushed it, expecting it to be locked. It wasn't. Inside, the room smelled of rust and dust. Old case files stacked on metal racks. Outdated uniforms hanging limp on hooks. And beneath it all, a low moan. Her flashlight caught movement near the far wall. A man slumped against a column, wrists bound with plastic ties, his face bruised and pale. Daniels. He flinched at the light, blinking hard. "Sarah?" His voice was broken, hoarse, the sound of someone who hadn't spoken in days. She knelt beside him, cutting the ties with a metal shard she found on the floor. "What did they do to you?" He coughed, trying to speak. "They brought him in, a man who looked just like me. I thought it was some kind of joke. Then they made him walk like me, made him talk like me. They filmed him giving testimony. It wasn't live, Sarah. It was a recording." Her blood ran cold. "Then who was in court?" "I don't know," he rasped. "But it wasn't me. Cole's people did something. Some internal tech units. They've been running identity tests for months. Reconstructing witnesses. Digital doubles." Sarah's mind reeled. "You're saying they faked your presence in court?" "Yes." His head dropped. "And now they'll destroy every trace of me that doesn't match the version they created." Footsteps echoed down the hall. Sarah's stomach turned. "Hide," Daniels whispered. She slid behind a stack of boxes, pulling the flashlight off. A sliver of light from the doorway stretched across the room. Two shadows entered. One of them, broad shoulders, careful gait, was unmistakable. Sergeant Cole. His voice was calm, almost casual. "Ben, you shouldn't have come back here. You were supposed to stay quiet." Daniels tried to stand. "You can kill me, Cole, but the evidence." Cole smiled faintly. "Already handled." He drew something from his coat. Not a gun, an ID card. He tossed it to the ground in front of Daniels. It bore his own name, photo, and badge number. But the face on the card wasn't his anymore. It was the version they'd shown in court. "You've been updated," Cole said softly. "You should feel honored. You're more useful this way." Daniels lunged at him, but Cole moved first, fast, precise. A heavy blow sent Daniels crashing to the floor. Sarah bit, her lip hard to keep from crying out. Cole knelt, voice low. "Tell your little friend, if she keeps digging, her daughter's next." He stood, turned, and walked out. The second man followed, the door closing behind them. Sarah rushed to Daniels' side. His face was white, blood running from his temple. "We have to go," she said. He nodded weakly. "There's a drive, top shelf red case." "Take it." She grabbed it, shoved it into her bag, then half-carried him toward the back exit. Outside, the rain came harder, pounding against the pavement like gunfire. They stumbled into the alley, lungs burning. Daniels gripped her wrist, eyes fierce even through the pain. That drive, they won't stop for it. It proves everything. The cloning, the false testimony, Cole's network. Keep it hidden. Don't trust anyone. Sarah met his gaze. What about you? He shook his head. I won't make it. But if you let them win, none of this matters. She wanted to argue, but the sound of sirens rose in the distance. Daniels pushed her toward the end of the alley. Go. Now. She hesitated, then turned and ran through the rain, through the ache in her chest, through the horror of what she'd just seen. As she reached her car, she looked back once. The alley was empty, and for the first time, she realized the truth wasn't just dangerous, it was contagious. Once you saw it, it didn't let go. She started the engine, clutching the drive to her chest. In the mirror, blue lights flashed closer. There was no turning back. The courthouse stood under a bruised morning sky, its windows streaked with rain like tears refusing to fall. Reporters crowded the steps, shouting names, flashes slicing through the fog. Sarah stepped from the car without looking at them. Her coat was soaked, her eyes hollow but fixed. In her hand, a small silver drive glinted between her fingers, the same one Daniels had died for. She didn't flinch when a voice called out from behind the police tape. Miss Hayes, are the rumors true? Do you have evidence against the department? She didn't answer. She only kept walking. Inside, the hallways smelled of bleach and old wood polish. Every sound, the echo of footsteps, the low hum of fluorescent lights, felt like the inside of a confession. She passed the courtroom where it had all begun, where a 3-year-old had whispered something to a police dog that made the world stop breathing. Now, she was here to finish it. The courtroom was smaller than she remembered. Empty pews, cold air. The judge's bench loomed high and expressionless. Cole stood near the prosecution table, composed as ever, his uniform pressed, his face calm. His eyes found her and didn't waver. You shouldn't have come back, he said quietly. I didn't, she replied. I never left. He smiled faintly, as if amused by her defiance. You think anyone will believe you? The files are gone. Daniels is gone. The system works because it forgets. Sarah stepped closer, placing the drive on the table between them. Then let's remember it. He leaned forward. What's on it? The truth, she said. The recordings. The replication data. The tests your people ran on Daniels and on me. Cole froze. You. She nodded slowly. You didn't just fake witnesses. You ran simulations on defendants too, didn't you? I was never meant to win, Cole. I was just another model to test. For a moment, something flickered across his face, recognition or maybe guilt, but it vanished almost immediately. You have no idea what you're talking about, he said. Sarah smiled without warmth. Then play it. Let the judge hear. Let them hear. He hesitated. His composure cracked just slightly, and in that silence she knew she'd struck home. The judge entered. Ms. Hayes, Sergeant Cole, approach. Sarah walked forward. Cole followed, jaw tight. The judge regarded the drive. You claim this contains evidence of falsified testimony? Yes, Your Honor, Sarah said. It's all there. The replication software, the manipulated recordings, the falsified courtroom footage. Cole cut in. Objection. There's no proof this data is authentic. Then, verify it, Sarah said sharply. Run it on the system. If I'm lying, the code will show it. The judge looked between them, then nodded to the clerk. The drive was inserted into the projection terminal. The lights dimmed. For a moment, nothing. Then static. A flicker. And there he was, Officer Daniels, his face pale under fluorescent light, speaking words Sarah had heard only in nightmares. My name is Officer Benjamin Daniels. I testify that Sarah Hayes assaulted her child and obstructed the investigation. But The timestamp in the corner didn't match the date of the trial. It was recorded days before. The voice was Danielle's, but the eyes were wrong. The pupils didn't dilate right. The expression lagged a heartbeat behind the words. Then, another clip, Daniel's in a chair, bruised, whispering through blood. They're copying us. Using our faces. Please, whoever finds this, don't trust the court. Gasps rippled through the room. Cole's hand shot forward, trying to yank the drive free, but two officers restrained him instantly. Sarah's chest rose and fell, tears threatening to break, but she held firm. Cole turned toward her, his calm gone, his voice trembling with rage. You think you won? This isn't over. You don't understand what they're building. Sarah's voice was steady, almost cold. No, but I understand what you destroyed. The judge's gavel struck, the sound like thunder. Sergeant Cole, you are under arrest for obstruction of justice, perjury, and tampering with federal evidence. The room exploded with noise, officers shouting, reporters pushing through the doors, the metallic clink of handcuffs closing around Cole's wrists. He turned once more toward Sarah, his eyes dark and hollow. You'll wish you hadn't seen it, he whispered. Then they took him away. Outside, the rain had stopped. Sarah stood on the courthouse steps, the world roaring around her, cameras flashing, people shouting her name. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. A gentle tug at her coat made her turn. Lily stood there, small hand clutching Hector's leash. The police dog looked up at her, calm, loyal, eyes soft with something almost human. Lily's voice was quiet, but sure. Mommy, he says it's over now. Sarah knelt, her throat tightening. Does he? The child nodded solemnly. He says the bad man won't hurt anyone again. Sarah wrapped her arms around her daughter, breathing her in, the scent of rain, innocence, and new beginnings. Around them, the noise faded into a hum, like the world was finally exhaling. She looked once more toward the courthouse doors where Cole had vanished. For a fleeting second, she thought she saw a figure watching her from the glass. Danielle's reflection, faint and fading, as if saying goodbye. Then he was gone. The sun broke through the clouds, thin and hesitant, spilling light across the courthouse steps. Sarah stood, holding Lily's hand, and walked into the brightness without looking back. For the first time in years, she didn't feel hunted. She felt whole. And somewhere deep inside the silence that followed, a single truth remained. Even when the system lies, courage remembers the truth louder. The city moved on as if nothing had happened. News cycles spun for a week, then found new tragedies to devour. Cole's arrest made headlines, then faded beneath politics and celebrity scandals. But for Sarah, silence wasn't closure, it was survival. She sat by her window in the small apartment she once called a cage, the same rain tapping softly against the glass. But this time, the sound didn't unsettle her. It grounded her. Hector lay near her feet, head resting against her leg, his breathing slow and steady. Lily slept in the next room, her laughter from earlier still echoing faintly in Sarah's mind. A sound she thought she'd never hear again without guilt clawing at it. The case was officially closed. Cole's network dismantled. The falsified digital witnesses traced back to private contracts under his supervision. Dozens of old convictions were being re-examined, names pulled from files that had gathered dust and lies. Justice, they called it, but Sarah knew better. Justice wasn't about righting wrongs. It was about learning how to live after them. She reached for the file Daniels had left behind, the one she couldn't bring herself to hand over completely. Inside were fragments, corrupted code, redacted names, pieces of a truth too dangerous to release all at once. She could have destroyed it. Part of her wanted to. But another part, the part that had learned what silence costs, wouldn't allow it. The door creaked open. Lily appeared, hair messy, eyes half dreaming. "Mommy," she whispered, "you're still awake." Sarah smiled faintly. "I was just thinking about the bad people." She hesitated, then shook her head. "About good people." The ones who tried to help. Lily patted over and climbed into her lap. Hector shifted closer, curling at their feet. Is Officer Daniels in heaven now? Sarah's throat tightened. I think so. Lily nodded like she understood something deep. Then he's okay. Sarah kissed her daughter's forehead. Yes, he's okay. For a while, they just sat there watching the rain. Weeks passed. The world didn't suddenly become kind. Sarah still got looks when she walked into the courthouse for post-trial meetings. Some saw her as brave, others as a problem. She didn't care. She'd learned that truth doesn't need approval, it just needs endurance. One morning, she received a letter without a return address. The handwriting was familiar but shaky. If you're reading this, I didn't make it out. But that's all right. Someone needed to see it through. Don't let them bury what's left of the truth. Not all of us are gone. Ben, her fingers trembled. For a moment, the room seemed smaller, heavier. She pressed the paper to her chest, then folded it carefully and placed it in her journal beside a photo of her and Lily, their first day back home after the verdict. The world would never know all of what happened, and that was fine. Not every truth needed to burn bright. Some just needed to exist quietly, like a candle in a dark room. Months later, she returned to the courthouse. It wasn't for testimony this time. It was for a community hearing a new transparency board formed after Cole's exposure. She'd been asked to speak, to share her experience. Standing at the podium, she looked over the faces, lawyers, victims, officers, skeptics. For a second, she felt small again, like the woman who once begged to be heard. But then she remembered the child who had spoken to a police dog in that same courtroom, who had looked at the truth without fear. My name is Sarah Hayes, she began, her voice steady. I was once accused of a crime I didn't commit. And for a long time, I believed the system could fix itself. But systems don't change, people do. The room was silent. I'm not here to punish anyone. I'm here because silence lets this happen. Because people saw wrong and turned away. Because truth became negotiable. And because one man, Officer Daniels, gave everything to remind us that justice isn't made in courts. It's made with courage. Her eyes swept the room, meeting those who couldn't look back. I forgave Cole, she said quietly. Not because he deserved it, but because I did. Hate was eating me alive, and forgiveness was the only way to bury him without burying myself. When she stepped down, the applause was hesitant at first, then grew until it filled the hall. She didn't smile. Not yet. Change was never applause. It was the silence that followed, when people started to think differently. That night, she and Lily walked by the river. The water reflected the streetlights in broken ribbons of gold. Lily skipped a stone, watching it ripple outward. Mommy, why did the dog listen to me that day? Sarah watched the ripples fade. Because sometimes the innocent see what grown-ups forget how to. See what? The truth. Lily looked up at her mother, then nodded with quiet certainty, as if that made perfect sense. They kept walking. A soft wind brushed through the trees. For the first time, Sarah didn't feel hunted by shadows. She felt guided by them. Reminders of what she had faced and survived. The moral weight of it all never left her. She still wondered if exposing the truth had cost too much, if Daniel's death, the trauma, the fear, could ever be justified by justice that arrived too late. But then she'd look at Lily's face, unburdened and bright, and she'd know the answer. Some truths destroy, others rebuild. Hers had done both. When they reached the bridge, she stopped, leaning on the railing. The city stretched before them, messy, flawed, alive. Lily tugged her hand. Can we go home now? Sarah smiled, the first true one in years. Yes, baby, we already are. They crossed together, their footsteps echoing softly over the water. And somewhere far behind them, in the courthouse that had once been her ruin, the lights flickered once, then steadied, like the world exhaling after a long, dark breath. Sarah didn't look back. She didn't need to. The past had already spoken. The future was hers to write. Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like it, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more meaningful stories. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.